Добрий день.
Good afternoon. We are starting our next interview.
Пан Петро, чи ви нас чуєте, бачите?
Mr. Varyshko, can you see and hear us? Yes, I can hear you and I can see you.
Зараз буквально пару хвилин технічне налаштування.
We need a couple of seconds to adjust the technical aspects. We cannot see you anymore as yet. So how about now? Yes, we can see you now. Welcome, Mr. Varyshko.
Вітаємо вас на другому етапі відбору
Welcome to stage 2
членів Вищої кваліфікаційної комісії.
of the selection for the High Qualification Commissions of Judges. This is an interview that will be held with all of the commissioners present, including Ted Zazhechny, me, Ivan Mishchenko, Stephen Markman, Robert Bruggeisen, Serhiy Varlanov, and Evgeny Mezintsev. The rapporteurs are Ted Zazhechny and Serhiy Varlanov. If for any reason, Mr. Varyshko, our interview is interrupted, let's say because of a power outage or an air raid alert or some other technical things, the Commission will reach you and will resume your interview on a different day and at a different time. So please keep your mobile phone nearby, and should there be any technical issues, we'll reach you. So don't worry if your interview is interrupted for those reasons. We are kindly asking you to be very precise when answering our questions. The commissioners have the right to limit the duration of your answer. At the very beginning, you'll have up to 5 minutes to tell us more about your motivation, tell us about why you decided to participate in the selection, to present your main ideas. So let us start. And with this, I'm passing the floor to my colleagues. Ted, Serhiy, you're welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Varyshko. My name is Ted Zazhechny, and I am a member of the Selection Commission assigned to make some presentations with respect to your application for membership on the High Qualification Commission. As part of the information, Mr. Varyshko, as you are well aware, that you provided to our commission, there was a biography, an autobiography, as well as your motivation letter, and of course your letters of support or reference. And I was very interested. You've had a very full and complete work history and work career. And I see that among other things that you had a number of jobs between 1981 and 1991. And ultimately, however, you found yourself working in the law. You worked in the banking business, and the rest of your career, for all intents and purposes, has been as a lawyer in private practice, working for individual firms or as an individual, independent, professional lawyer. You have been married, and you have 3 daughters, all of whom are adults, and I might say very accomplished. Now, there are a number of points that I think we need to discuss with you, Mr. Varyshko, in terms of your experiences. I was particularly interested in the fact that you were from 2014 to 2016 a member of the Temporary Special Commission for the Inspection of Judges of Courts of General Jurisdiction, established by the law of Ukraine. And the purpose was to restore confidence in the judiciary in Ukraine. Your experience also includes from 2016 and a portion of 2017, a membership in the Public Integrity Council. And of course, we are interested in that experience as well and what you learned from that and what you can share with us. You were secretary of a selection commission for selecting candidates for the positions in the State Bureau of Investigation. So you certainly have some experience with the work of a selection commission like ours, for example. And from 2017 until the present, you have been a member of the Kiev Regional Bar Council. So a good variety of experience in your years, sir. Most recently, of course, you are in the armed service of Ukraine, and for that we pay our compliments to you, sir, and for your dedication to serve the defense of Ukraine. Now, a good part of our interview, Mr. Varyshko, relates to questions that we put to the candidates for the position of a membership on the High Qualification Commission. And I will start that process. I want to introduce to you my colleague, Judge Verlanov. Judge Verlanov is the co-presenter of your application for membership to our commission members. You indicate that when you were elected to the Special Commission on Restoring Confidence in the Judiciary, you were elected, and I'm interested to know by whose vote, or how were you elected, by whom?
Good afternoon. Can I start answering now?
Yes, I'm sorry. My chairman has just reminded me that before we get our turn, you, of course, have your turn, sir. And so you will now have the opportunity to address us for 3 or 4 minutes now. And tell us of your motivation, please, for seeking a position on the High Qualification Commission of Judges, and any information that you think it would be important for us to know in that regard.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ted, for this very detailed, even though concise information about my career. So it appears that I will be reiterating some of the things already mentioned. Yes. In the 90s, it was just the beginning of the Ukrainian state. We have switched to a completely different mode of our existence. So as any young person, I had the right to choose. I was trying to find myself in different areas, in different professions. That's why I was occupying different positions, including top positions. I was working at a bank, and I was the CFO there. But with time, I understood that as an adult already, I understood that I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to defend people, and I changed my life. I left all my previous professions behind, and I started working as a regular lawyer. And then in 2005, when I got my license to practice law, and up until present, with the exclusion of some periods of time, including the war, I've been working as an independent lawyer. And you were right to mention that in 2014, I was elected a member of Interim Special Committee. I was elected there on recommendation of my friends, the veterans of the war in Afghanistan. And it was probably more of their decision. I didn't really understand what was expected of me, but my friends told me that I could always come back to war. But my professional activities as a lawyer was more demanded here in Ukraine. That's why I became a member of the Interim Special Committee that was investigating the case of Maidan. And later, as you already mentioned, I worked for this committee for 2 years. Then it was quite routine work when we were transferring the materials of the case to the High Council of Justice. Then, upon the recommendation of civil society organizations, I was selected a member of Public Integrity Council, and I worked there for a little bit over 6 months. And in April, I had to resign. I had to leave the Public Integrity Council for family reasons. My child got sick. It was quite a problem for me, and I practically had no choice. I had to choose between my child and my work, and I chose my child. Maybe it's not the correct thing to do, but I believe it was the right choice. Later, I returned to my practice as a lawyer, and then on the insistence of civil society organizations, I was recommended to the Selection Commission of the State Bureau of Investigations, and as a result, I was appointed the secretary of the Selection Commission. I worked there for a year and a half. The workload was quite intense because more than 10,000 people applied, and we had 400-something vacancies. That is why we had to do a lot of work. We worked from morning till night. After the selection procedure was over, I left the selection commission, and it should be mentioned that since 2014, I occupied all those positions on a voluntary basis, and I was not expecting, I did not get any reimbursement, I did not get any grant money, so I used the reserves that I had, and I used the money that I earned as a lawyer. And on February the 24th, when the full-scale invasion started, I, as a former military man and as a citizen of this country, made the decision to join the armed forces, and I'm still part of the armed forces. I'm constantly there on the front line, and that's basically everything that I wanted to tell you as this introduction. It should be added that all those positions, all those selection commissions, all those collegial bodies that I served on since 2014 have brought me to today. It's like a logical continuation of my work. At least that's my expectation, that it will result in me being appointed member of the High Qualification Commission of Judges of Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Varyshko, and you answered one of my questions in your presentation, so I appreciate that. In your motivation letter, Mr. Varyshko, you begin by saying and recognizing your election to this temporary special commission for restoring confidence in the judiciary. And you've told us about that as well. Now, you put it in a rather interesting way. You understood that the responsibility was to clean up the judicial branch of power. Can you please share with us some of your thoughts about that? What were the problems at that time that needed cleaning up? And in your opinion, do you consider those to still be the problems today?
Thank you for the question. Yes. Unfortunately, let me share my personal vision of the judiciary in Ukraine. I don't share the opinions of some of the experts who say that the situation is grave. Yes, we do have some problems, but the judiciary, if we look at the circumstances that we are under, well, I believe that it's working in full force. As far as the issues that existed back in 2014 are concerned, yes, there were some judges or judges of specific courts who, to various degrees, became dependent and were forced to make decisions that, in terms of law, were not lawful, and in terms of legal framework were not compliant. For instance, if we're talking about the decisions of Judge Sanin, who prohibited that all citizens of Ukraine during 2 months to stay in the central part of the city, where practically all the New Year's festivities happen, where we have the New Year's tree. And this judge made this decision to strip all the citizens of Ukraine of this right. It's just one of the examples. Unfortunately, at that time, we also had, from what I know, we also had other issues. Of course, it did not apply to all judges and all of the judiciary, but some of the judges were working and making their decisions using a phone call. They stemmed from political justifications, and that was something that I disagreed with, and 40 million of Ukrainians disagreed with that. That's why we came out to Maidan, and that is why I decided to join the commission, because we will never be able to achieve anything if there is no lawful punishment for people who are doing things like that. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. I'm going to move to a different subject, if I may now, and that is the Public Integrity Council and the period of time and the experience you had as a member of the PIC, I will call it. It is no secret that the PIC and the High Qualification Commission of Judges, and I'll call it the HQCJ, has had difficulty in their relationships with one another, to the point, as you may recall, that the PIC discontinued its involvement in the judicial selection process. Now, do you have any suggestions, sir, as to the steps that could be taken by the HQCJ, should you be a member of that commission, any steps that could be taken to improve relations and to make the involvement of the PIC more relevant and more influential?
Thank you. I understood your question. The answer to this question may be really long, but I will try to be succinct. Let me try to explain the most important things. So, what happened back then? At least this is my opinion. There was certain violation of the law when the Public Integrity Council was being formed. Article 87 of the law on the Public Integrity Council specifies the quantitative and qualitative composition of Public Council of Integrity. And one of the aspects of this article and one of the requirements is to have accomplished specialists, acknowledged specialists, recognized specialists. I have nothing against my colleagues. We worked alongside with them, but the majority of them are quite young people. And their young age played a negative role in the work of PIC, because sometimes maximalism is not justified. And perhaps they needed to have more wisdom. I'm talking about members of PIC. And I can tell you that, in principle, I was myself surprised that I was recommended by some of the organizations who considered that I was an accomplished specialist. Whatever our vision of the judiciary is indeed important. It's an independent branch of the government. And, you know, it's like a Fabergé egg. It's beautiful, but at the same time, we need to take care of it. Thank you.
Yes. I think that is an interesting observation, and it will be a lesson, I think, to many who are interested in that relationship between the PIC and the HQCJ. I just have one last question. You know from the questions that we gave to all candidates, including you, to answer, question number 6, you answered that you have never been a member of a political party, etc., and your political party activity begins and ends with public position and active participation in the Orange Maidan and the Revolution of Dignity. It's been brought to my attention that in 2019, you signed a petition which, among other things, said something to the effect that we believe that Poroshenko, the former president's attempts to remain on the post of president of Ukraine for another term are a threat to the existence of the Ukrainian state. Now, to some, and perhaps many, that would sound like a political statement. And I'm wondering what your answer is to that concern. Do you have any political involvement? Do you have any positions that you are currently taking that may cause difficulty for the High Qualification Commission of Judges?
Thank you. I understood your question. Well, let me reiterate that I've never been a member of any political party, and the very fact of me signing this petition, I'm sorry for my voice, I've gotten a little bit sick, but the very fact that I signed this petition, there's no risk for me as a potential member of HQCJ, because it has nothing to do with the politics itself. The Constitution of Ukraine says that the sole source of power in Ukraine are the people of Ukraine, and as a citizen of Ukraine, I have the right, in any peaceful way, to express my protest. And basically, I see nothing wrong with this, because this is my opinion. I had lots of grievances against the former President Poroshenko and the other previous presidents, and I've always expressed them. I don't think this is political activity. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to turn the matter over now to my colleague, Judge Verlanov, my co-presenter of your application to our commission, for any questions that he may have. Sergey?
Thank you, Ted. Petro, welcome. Good afternoon. You have just informed us and my colleague has informed us that you were performing the duties of a member of the Public Integrity Council for a certain period of time, starting with November 2016 to November 2017. That's why, taking into account this information, let me ask you the following. Since you were performing such duties, you, of course, know about the qualification assessment, qualification selection of judges as performed by the High Qualification Commission of Judges of Ukraine back then. So let me ask you the following question. What is your assessment of the very procedure of qualification selection and qualification assessment of judges? Does it need to be changed? And if yes, what kind of changes would those be? To tell the truth, the assessment and the selection that were taking place back then seemed to me, and actually seem to me even now, to be absolutely logical in terms of the content, the form, and the system of holding it. The only thing is that the load of the members of the High Qualification Commission was very high, and probably it seemed that there was some chaos in that. All the more that, as it has been noticed today, some misunderstanding with the Public Integrity Council actually did introduce some chaos and stressful factors into the very competition. Well, to tell the truth, I don't see that something needs to be majorly changed. This procedure just should be completed, logically completed, brought to the end. That's the most important thing. So you think that this procedure determined by the law is logical, complete, exhaustive, and correct, right? Yes, yes. Well, maybe if I'm elected a member of the High Qualification Commission of Judges of Ukraine and I am well aware of the whole spectrum of issues up to the smallest, minutest detail, I will get some new ideas concerning some changes, and I will probably even address the lawmakers concerning some changes. But as for now, I cannot just tell that everything was that bad, everything was wrong, and let me come and I will change everything, it will become perfect. This would not correspond to reality because, in fact, that is quite hard work. You just need to do it properly and adequately, and the main thing is for you to be given an opportunity to do it adequately and properly. Thank you. Thank you, Petro.
Mr. Varyshko, I am now going to request a colleague of mine, Mr. Stephen Markman, to pose any questions he may have to you.
Thank you very much, Judge Zarzeczny, and thank you very much, Mr. Varyshko, for your participation in this competition. Let me ask you this question, if I might, please. You say in your motivation, among many other things, that it's essential to introduce a more thorough and enhanced verification of judicial candidates for compliance with the various standards of competency and ethics that are involved in this process. And you bring the enormously interesting perspective of having served on the Temporary Special Commission, the SBI, the PIC, and just merely as an observer of judicial reforms over the course of the last decade at least. And most of all, you've been a candidate for 1 year in our process. How are we doing in terms of enhancing compliance? You've gone through this process and you've had questionnaires and evaluations and now this interview. Are we going in the right direction? Are we missing something? Is there something more we should be doing? Is there something you would counsel us to do a better job on? What are your perspectives?
Дякую за запитання. Ну, насправді мені важко
Well, thank you for the
давати,
question. It's very difficult for me to give any assessment, all the more to assess your activity.
особисто для мене.
The only thing
Просто я розумію,
is
що
that,
такий період,
well,
на жаль,
I just know that unfortunately we are living in the period of the full-scale
певних членів
war, and it's all about the security of the members of the selection commission. The only thing I would like to change is to have this interview face-to-face with you.
все-таки жива
Because
співбесіда, вона є
face-to-face
повністю
communication is the only one that could really reproduce the intonation, the willingness of the person, and show the full picture and establish this rapport between the candidate and the selection commission. That's it.
Well, we wish we could do that, of course, but we haven't found that possible. But am I fair in summarizing your attitudes that we do seem to be moving in the right direction in terms of the commitment to judicial reform in Ukraine that I think each of the commissioners is bringing to bear in this process?
Я на ваше запитання
Well,
можу відповісти.
to answer your question, I can just tell the following.
Не було внесено певних змін.
Were it not for some changes introduced to the selection procedure for the HQCJ, taking into account the fact that the selection commission will have our judges and foreign experts, I would not have submitted an application for this context because I would not probably think it worth wasting my time. But since the commission has this composition, I decided that there are some prospects and there are some hopes that my experience and my strivings and my willingness could be clearly seen and could be professionally assessed, regardless of the fact whether I am elected or I'm not elected. For me, it's important to be heard by you as a candidate,
Це зараз стало можливо.
and this has become possible.
Let me also ask you, Mr. Varyshko, if you could bring some perspective on one more thing, and that is, as my colleague, Judge Zarzechny, has indicated, you have enlisted in the armed services of Ukraine, and you've shown great patriotism in that regard. You, of course, also served in the armed forces of the Soviet Union many years ago. We have not had many candidates who have that breadth of perspective. What thoughts, if any, do you bring to the judicial reform process drawn from the service that you've done in the armed services of two very different nations like those, if any?
Ну, що стосується
Well,
того часу, коли
as far as the period of my service in the army of the Soviet Union is concerned, that was the experience which I'm rather ashamed of than proud of. And I would not like to use this experience. But as far as my current service is concerned, it gives me the ground to believe that if I'm elected a member of the HQCJ,
щодо того, що я
my experience, my skills, my decision-making skills, and the fact that I'm ready to be responsible for my decisions will be of use, will come in handy for me. Because, you know, on the front line, you have to pass decisions which are quick decisions and which directly,
залежать долі людей.
affect the destinies of many people. I've always been balanced, a well-balanced person, and many people can actually testify to that, even those who saw how I worked in the interim special committee. But after the armed aggression, you know, I think that I will be even more careful about candidates, and I will be very careful in terms of listening to them, hearing them, in order to pass really the decisions that will positively affect the country and the people.
You know, I just can't overemphasize the number of motivation letters that we've received from the more than 300 candidates that we've had in this process who speak so directly and so movingly and so passionately about the current war effort that the country is engaged in and how it's so motivated them to become involved in this competition and to see their country united in the way that this war has brought the country together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. I will now turn the questioning over to Judge Yevgen Mizantsev.
Thank you so much.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe Robert will be first.
Yes, all right. Pardon me. Pardon me.
We switch our questions.
Yes, I was going to alternate between our international members and our
Okay.
and our Ukrainian members, but I don't want to offend my dear colleague Robert Broekhuizen, so I will turn to you, Robert.
No offense at all, that I understand that not being a judge, it's difficult for you to see me sitting somewhere. Mr. Varyshko, of course I've read all the information that is available to me in English, which is not everything. And the first question I have for you is the following. You say in the motivation letter, when you're asked what kind of changes should be made, if I'm not mistaken, to enhance trust in the judicial system, you say, at the same time, as a quote, at the same time, the principle should be introduced that the judge has not a right, but a duty to be independent. I am convinced that the independence of a judge is equal to the independence of the judiciary. And when I read that, and maybe that's a wrong translation, I read that as if you say that at present a judge should not be, does not have the obligation to be independent, but can be independent if he chooses. That cannot be correct. What is exactly what if you still remember what you wanted to say with this line?
Thank you for the question. Yes, I do clearly remember it because I've been talking about this statement since 2014 when I was invited as a member of the Interim Special Commission to the Congress of Judges, where I expressed my standpoint. It so happened that it was after the speech of the president, the then president. I went there with my speech and said that, dear judges, I have just one request from the people of Ukraine to you. And I said that you don't have just the right to be independent, you have the duty to be independent. And if every judge is really independent, the judiciary in general will also be independent. So probably the translation is not exactly. And I really think that it's not the right of the judge to be independent. If he wants to be independent, he is. If not, then not. No, it's a duty of the judge to be independent. If he is wearing a robe, he passes decisions in the name of Ukraine. That's why he has the duty to be independent. I mean, independent from the so-called telephone law, from financial support, from any family contacts, any political ideas and things like that. That's what I mean by an independent judge. Thank you.
Yes. When, of course, this should be so. We completely agree on that. When I listened to you in your, let's say, opening statement, I got the idea that you said, and maybe again, maybe it's in translation, that the situation was not so good in judiciary in 2014 during the Maidan change, but that lots have changed, and that, for instance, foreign experts or experts do not have a correct view of the present situation of the judiciary. I don't know whether I understood that correctly, but this is what I heard. My question to you is, what is, in your view, the present status of the judiciary?
Well, you know, thank you for the question, first of all. In the current conditions of the full-scale war,
не зовсім
I
100% володію певною інформацією.
probably don't have 100% of accurate information, because starting with the 24th of February and up till now,
Незначні
besides some
я приїжджаю до
small
Києва, я
breaks when I
перебуваю
come to Kyiv, I always stay on the front line. But
мені дзвонять колеги, адвокати,
I'm given calls
інформацію.
by my colleagues who are lawyers, attorneys at law, and I think that if we take into account current conditions, the judiciary of Ukraine is working on the verge of what is possible. And I would say that I would rather assess the judiciary of Ukraine positively, give it a positive score, and give a positive score to judges in general, because it's not easy to work under such conditions.
Okay. But even though you choose to become a member of the HQCJ, and you also say there is the need for reform. So, let's say if the judiciary was so changed and did so much better, why are you still wishing to participate in the HQCJ? Because in your motivation letter you say that what you want is to ensure the rights of all citizens to justice during the restoration of statehood. I read it again from your recommendation letter. And that implicates that at present it is not good enough, and that you wish to invest time and energy to change it. Most likely not for the money, but for the principle. That is what I read.
Пане Роберт, ну, насамперед
Well,
треба
Robert,
визнати, що
first of all, we
немає
need to
межі
recognize
удосконалення.
that there is always room for
Система
perfection.
повинна вдосконалюватися
You know, the
завжди.
system should keep going and should keep
Немає
developing
такого,
all the
там,
time.
де нічого не робить.
The mistakes are
І, на
not
жаль,
made where
теперішній ситуації,
nothing is made, right?
є певні
And
недоліки, які, на мій погляд,
I think that
потрібно
our
міняти.
judiciary, of course, has some disadvantages, some drawbacks which need to be changed. We should rather create the system of changes that would be launched and based on specific morale,
такими устоями,
on certain principles and standards, when, be it an official or be it a judge, if a certain mistake is made, would pass an independent decision without waiting for punishment.
Дякую.
Thank you.
All right, now your turn, Judge Mizanchev.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Доброго дня, пане Петре. Моє прізвище Мезенцев.
Good afternoon, Petro. I'm Yevhen Mezentsev, and let me ask you a question.
Цього моменту ці питання до вас
Since
стосувалися
all the
в
questions
основному,
before my questions have been related to some theoretical knowledge or some contemplation, some ideas of yours, I would like to discuss with you a practical issue. And let me tell you right away that there is no right answer to this question so far, but I would like to hear what your idea as a lawyer is, and also as a serviceman. What is the problem?
Наприклад,
For example, let's assume that you are recommended for the position of a member of the HQCJ,
і за результатами
and on the basis of the results of the selection conducted by the High Council of Justice, you are elected. Now you are an active serviceman and you've been mobilized to the army, as I understand. So it's very difficult to just demobilize from the army. It's impossible. So what would be your idea? What would you do? And what would we do for you as a mobilized serviceman to be allowed to work in the position to which you have been elected, the position of the member of the HQCJ?
Дякую, я зрозумів ваше
Thank you.
запитання.
I've got your question.
Ну, насамперед, я не
Well,
мобілізований.
first of all, I have not been mobilized. I'm a volunteer. I went to the army on a volunteer basis. Are you a member of the Territorial Defense Forces? I used to be a member of the Territorial Defense Forces, and then I actually went over to the armed forces of Ukraine.
Власне кажучи, так,
Well, there are some legislative gaps as far as this procedure is concerned. I know what you are talking about, but there is no ban concerning being dismissed from the army as a serviceman if he is appointed to some positions, for state positions, public offices. For example, in 2014, people were elected to the Verkhovna Rada, they were appointed to the positions, state positions, but the law also does not have any special option for the serviceman who is elected to some public office. That actually depends on the commandment of a specific unit, on the vision of the commanders, whether it's possible to let the person go or not if he's elected. But it would be expedient to actually take into account the fact that we have a full-scale war, and unfortunately it will still last for some time, the way I'm sure that we will win. It would be really correct if these limits, these criteria, were established by the law, because in fact this is a technical problem. It's not related to the law, it's not related to any other aspects, it's just a technical issue. Okay, I've got you. Thank you, Petro. And actually you are right that this is a technical issue, and it's really unfair that a serviceman who is fighting for the country cannot at the same time be serving his country in a different front, holding a top public office if he's elected. Unfortunately, there is no mechanisms for that as yet. There is only an opportunity to have a kind of a business trip on the basis of the decision of the headquarters and the commander-in-chief concerning a business trip of a serviceman to the specific public authority. But the structure and is more of an individual nature. This is not the general rule. You know why I'm asking this? We had a meeting with the High Council of Justice last week. We discussed this issue, and now our commission and the task force, working together with the High Council of Justice, will be developing the proposals concerning establishment of a specific procedure order for the business trip of a serviceman who is elected to state institutions, including judicial institutions. And probably sometime later, we will even have amendments made to the law that would allow to demobilize a person if he's a serviceman and if he's elected to the HQCJ or the High Council of Justice, not to create barriers. This situation is the situation you will face anyway in the future, and you should just bear it in mind. And here is another question. Johan, if I could comment on this, if you allow me to. The point is that I really understand what the problem is, and you know, I actually submitted my document before the outbreak of the war, but then I resubmitted the package because it was not full, because the war broke out. But when the competition was restored, I actually took into account this specific situation of mine that I was in the special troops of the Ministry of Defense. I just addressed my commanders and told them, if you consider this not possible, I will stop my participation in the competition. But I got the answer that, no, please, we will support you. Go, submit your documents, we will support you in everything. And the Commission has also taken some measures to address the Ministry of Defense with a call urging to have some support provided to the servicemen who would like to participate in this competition, not to create any discriminative
військових людей.
conditions for the servicemen.
Ну, в принципі, на цьому все.
Well, that's actually it. Let's stop with this topic, discussion of this topic. And as far as your active civic standpoint is concerned, I actually meant to ask you the question about the political activity, but that has already asked this question. So now let's discuss a specific situation.
Людина,
You
яка
are a person who has an active civic standpoint, and I'm sure that you have faced such a situation.
якоїсь досить резонансної
Let's say that there is a high-profile and socially important case considered,
Причому справедливість
And
у цій ситуації,
justice
крім сторін,
in this situation is something that not only the parties to the trial proceedings are advocating, but also a certain civil society organization or group that creates a crowd of people expressing a certain standpoint during the court hearing. These people may be sometimes offending the other party or the judge, so everything is happening in a very loud way. And the judge in charge of the case sees this situation and probably is afraid of his own health and life, announces self-recusal.
Як ви вважаєте, чи
What do you
відповідає
think?
така поведінка судді
Will this
необхідним
conduct of the judge be conforming with the Code of Judicial Ethics?
Думаю, що дякую за запитання.
Thank you for the question.
Питання з нашого життя.
It's
Насправді,
actually the question
я чув про такі історії.
and the situation which we can see in our life. I have not participated in such cases, but I've heard about such cases, including the case in your appellate court when the issue of the Communist Party was considered. I think that in case
Або перед початком
either before the trial or in the court premises or somewhere else, any organization that has something to do with the consideration of which is the third party that is not a party to the case expresses any threat to the judge, then the judge has the moral right to announce self-recusal. Because every person may assess the level of risk for himself on an individual basis, and we cannot make a person, including a judge, to be a hero who should just not care about his own life. All right, thank you. And on the other hand, don't you think that such model of conduct,
зібрання натовпу
like gathering a crowd in front of the court premises and to express some offensive statements in regards to the judge, could be used by unfair, unscrupulous parties to the trial as an effective means of ensuring self-recusal of this judge because they aren't dissatisfied with the judge? Will it not be a mechanism of influencing the court administration and violation of the judicial mandate in this part? Well, I do think so. But along with that, I think that a judge who can, in high-profile cases, pass tough but fair decisions will not be intimidated using such methods. This is more about another category of judges. Please get me right. I'm the supporter of the protest, following the legislation, peaceful protest. But since I participated in 3 Maidans, I still don't confess this type of behavior. This is not with the behavior. No, I'm not trying to accuse you or to blame you, Petro. No, I'm not talking about myself. All right, so with your permission, let me explain what I mean. I just see that you are trying to give me the right answer. No, that's not true. But from my own point of view, I can tell there is no right or wrong answer. And I think that if a judge
впливу активістів
is
або
under the
натовпу,
influence of the crowd or the activists, that will actually reduce his or her value as a judge, because this shows that the judge is not that much independent. The other thing is that the judge must be protected by the state and protected by the court guard against the opportunities for such influences. That is the other matter. The judge should not be affected, should not suffer from the negative influence of the parties or possible threats. If you give a threat to a judge and he will announce self-recusal, in the case, the proceedings will be an endless procedure of self-recusals. That's why we should be somehow resistant to that. A judge should be more resilient, more resistant in this situation. And if you have the duty to administer justice, you need to perform this duty in spite of all the other things. But thank you, your standpoint is clear.
All right. Thank you, Judge Mezentsev. I now turn, not least, but last, to our chairperson, Ivan Mischenko. Judge Mischenko, do you have any questions?
Дякую.
Thank you.
Бажаю здоров'я, пан Петро.
I wish you to stay in good health, Petro. Thank you. Wishing you the same.
Давайте візьмемо за точку відліку
Let's
2014.
take the year 2015 as a point of departure, so to say, because you were rather active in the reform of the judiciary back then and you're rather active now. Just in brief, what is your progress and what is your failure? And if a failure, then why a failure? Well, thank you. You know, I managed to preserve people's faith in justice. And even the establishment of this interim special commission and adoption of the law on lustration that were not probably fully enacted and did not start fully functioning, but they helped to still preserve the faith of the citizens of Ukraine. They do believe that there is justice, there is fairness. It's a thorny, long way, and you have to fight for it, but it still exists. Unfortunately, what we have failed is winning over certain political forces that have done their best for the law on the restoration of trust in the judiciary and the law on purification of the judiciary have not worked as they were supposed to in the format that was actually intended by the authors of these laws and the lawmakers who were involved in that process. Yes, Petro, probably I've been wrong in phrasing my question. Sorry for that. I mean, not what has happened in 2015. I mean, over the period from 2014 up to 2023. Over the whole period. What has been in progress, what you have managed has been done, what has not. If we cover the whole period, I would say that the progress is that we managed to move to a certain degree of independence. Certain commissions have been established, and these commissions are independent by their essence, like your commission. About failures, well, just in brief, we have some failures because we still keep talking about some problems and challenges. This means that there are some failures, and we still have a lot of work ahead of us. You know, a sociological poll, and polls and surveys actually show that the judiciary takes the last places in the ranking of trust. The armed forces of Ukraine hold the first place, but unfortunately courts are somewhere at the end of the list. Well, you know, I am not a great supporter of sociology, social science, though I understand that this science is more or less accurate, the same as mathematics. But anyway, surveys are not exactly accurate because most of the respondents have never had anything to do with any court processes or judicial procedures. So it's like the principle of BBC, like that's word of mouth. Just someone tells you something and you believe. You know that if you are a lawyer or you are a judge, you understand that every party to the trial will understand that she has his own truth, but this truth may not really be the truth, objective truth. And quite often, a lot of people, when they just quit, they don't want to fight any longer. They just start disseminating some rumors, some false information. Okay, if you don't trust surveys, what kind of tool could be used to understand whether the judiciary has a high level of trust among citizens? How to understand whether the level of trust is sufficient enough to talk about the progress? Well, it seems to me, I'm not an expert in social science, but and actually I'm not very much interested in it, but it seems to me that we need to pay attention to the people, the ratio of people who really had something to do with with the court proceedings among the respondents. And if I'm not mistaken, this rate would be absolutely different. The percentage would be absolutely different in terms of trust. Yes, you're absolutely right. The figure would be different. But Petro, how do we build interaction and cooperation between the High Qualification Commission and the Public Integrity Council? Through trust, through the striving to find the language in common, to find the common denominator, and not to find just some divergences. And should we use the tool of negative opinions? Well, it's difficult to give a clear answer whether we should use this tool or not, but they say that some negative things, if taken together, will give a plus. Two minuses will give a plus. What is integrity for you? I think that it's not a material component. I don't think that following some rules in relation to your property will amount to your integrity. These are the issues for tax authorities. While integrity, as I think, well, of course, I cannot give the general definition and tell that all people would consider this to be integrity. But for me, integrity is the principle when I understand myself, I'm satisfied with myself, not in terms of my personal ego, but in terms of the fact that people do hear me, respect me, and agree with my ideas. And agree, not because I'm the smartest person ever, but because my conduct and my talks, my statements and my expressions are supported by my deeds, by my actions that are actions of integrity. We all know that integrity, rather the definition of integrity, is not there in the legislation, though almost in all competitions and selection procedures, this term is used very often and is the key criteria, but we don't have the definition. Just sorry, let me finish the question. Do you think that we should give a definition, we should define this term in legislation? Because, lawyers are using a certain term or a certain notion, and probably they all have a different interpretation of this notion. Thank you for the question. It is a very complex issue. In 2017, I remember that the law, there were some amendments introduced into the law, and the Public Integrity Council was established, and there were a lot of experts who were trying to produce some mathematical calculations to explain what integrity is.
Я не можу сказати, чи потрібно, чи не потрібно.
I cannot tell you whether we need the legislative definition of the notion of integrity, but maybe some criteria of integrity, some markers should be there, should be introduced.
Ну, обставин, поведінки,
Concerning some circumstances, some conduct, rules of behavior, but integrity in general is rather a generally accepted formula, general formula, not calculated formula of conduct of individuals.
Формування дуже багатьох аспектів
It includes a lot of dimensions
в своїй поведінці, в тому
that
ставленні
are
до людей,
created
в тому ставленні
through and developed through conduct, through attitude to money, to well-being, to some financial things and values. So in total,
і є добро, ну,
this is integrity, as I think.
Дякую.
Thank you.
Можливо, другий раунд.
Colleagues,
Maybe the second round.
yes, colleagues, I'm going to encourage a second round, but I'm going to ask you to limit your question to one question, if you would, please, and to give the candidate an opportunity to answer, hopefully with a short presentation on our parts. So, Justice Markman, if I may turn to you, please.
Thank you, Judge Zarzeczny. Mr. Varyshko, I have no more questions, but I'd just like to repeat what I said a few minutes ago. Thank you again for your involvement in this competition.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a burning question, I must say. I have been a lawyer like you for years, and clients come to me for decisions from courts. And if my clients come to me, they will ask me, will they get justice? And I can give the answer that the Dutch judiciary will give them justice. It doesn't mean that they will win. It means that the decision will be fair and honest. You are a lawyer for a very long time. You have had many, many clients. Is it so that if a client comes to you for the last 5 years, that you can tell them, yes, let's go to court. Yes, the client, I'm sure, don't be afraid. Justice will be done.
Дякую. На превеликий жаль.
Well, thank you. Unfortunately, I quite often had to use this
Єдине, що я
formula,
завжди казав людям,
but the only thing I used to tell people, to tell my clients, is that you will never achieve anything and you will never learn whether there is any justice if you don't do anything and if you don't go to court.
мені навіть приходилося
So it's a little bit different, and even in some complicated cases where I felt that I can actually help a person, but I saw that the person is hesitating whether he or she should go to court, whether he or she will be able to get the justice done, I actually rejected all my royalty. I just promised, I signed the agreement that I will work pro bono just for the sake of the person's believing in the fact that the person should be fighting for justice and should go to court.
But it's not an answer to the question. The question is, were you able to tell your client that justice would be done?
ні.
No. This is not the case 100%. I mean, not in all cases I could say something like this.
Добре, тоді давайте перейдемо до мого
Good, so
останнього питання.
let us go over to my last question,
Скажіть, будь
Petro.
ласка, ви усвідомлюєте
Do you
той
realize
обсяг роботи,
the
який на вас чекає
scope
в
of
разі,
work
якщо буде
you will have to do in
призначений
case you are appointed a member of the HQCJ?
Так, пане Євгене, я усвідомлюю. Більше того,
Yes, Yevhen, I do realize, and I think that it's going to be even a little bit smaller than the one which I had to do during some other jobs within the internal investigation bureau, because there were 3 stages of the competition and there were a lot of candidates. And the members of the selection commission was the representative of the Security Service, of the General Prosecutor's Office, and the Ministry of Justice. And you know, some of them were generals. And that's why they did not work. The lion's share of work was to be done by me. That's why my work day started at 6:30 in the morning and finished at midnight. You know, I just realized that now you are doing a very hard physical job and moral job, and I respect it. But unfortunately, we have thousands of not selected judges and judges who have not completed their assessment. Over the couple of recent years, a lot of challenges have appeared, and you will have, if you are appointed a member, you will have to deal with those problems. So good luck. Well, but that's why I have decided to participate in this competition, because I feel that I have enough energy to work and to do this job. Thank you. Petro, I will have one question to you. So, taking into account the fact that for almost a year you have been a serviceman and you are a lawyer with huge work experience, attorney at law. So, what is your opinion? Due to the armed aggression of the Russian Federation, shall we have military tribunals in Ukraine or no? Just in brief. Well, unfortunately, I don't have a clear answer to this question. I don't have a clear standpoint concerning military tribunals, military courts in Ukraine. Maybe in some new format. You know, when military courts were liquidated after the Soviet Union, I actually was very positive about this piece of news, because unfortunately those military courts were not independent back then. That's why this piece of news came as a very positive one for me. I was happy about that. But now, to tell the truth, there are some challenges we are facing because of the absence of such courts, because, you know, military problems, military cases are rather difficult to handle, of course. And I would probably speak not about the establishment of specific military tribunals. I would rather speak about the establishment of the military chamber, not to create some additional court that would be overloaded with some red tape, will have a lot of staff and things like that. I'm just asking whether there is a need for that. I'm not asking about the establishment of those courts, but whether there is a need for that. I think that yes, because unfortunately, we have a lot of crimes related to servicemen, and it seems to me that these crimes will be on the rise. And let me also repeat that it's rather difficult for an ordinary judge to get clear about certain issues related to service in the army. Clear? Thank you. No more questions.
Any further question, Justice Mischenko?
Пане Петро, досить популярною є думка про те, що
Petro, you know,
має бути
there is a popular opinion that the HQCJ and the High Council of Justice should merge, and in the following form, that the HQCJ should join the High Council of Justice, which would be the major body. What is your attitude to that? You know, I generally have a bad attitude to large corporations. And in this specific case, merger of one independent body with the other independent body will lead to the creation of the monster that will just be managing all the processes on its own. I think that distribution of roles is a better procedure. At least for me, it's a clear procedure, and I think that in this way it should be done. in two independent bodies and their existence actually guarantees some successful decisions. But you know, the supporters of this approach claim that these are the bodies that are duplicating their functions. You mean duplication of the functions of the HQCJ and the High Council of Justice? Yes.
Всю світову практику
And, well, of course, it's difficult to give reference to all the countries, but in most European countries, the counterparts of HQCJ and High Council of Justice are one body. The one and the same body trains judges, dismisses judges, does vetting of judges, but we have two bodies. Well, you know, the way of samurai is actually predetermined by the essence of his way. Unfortunately, we, as the state and as the judiciary, are only in the process of development. Maybe at some other stage when the positive performance is already there, and these results, these deliverables are reflected in social surveys. And when the load, the general load, will go down, maybe there could be a merger of these two bodies. But currently, I think that we need to settle the issues that are rather urgent. And this merger and change of functions will not be a good thing to do at this stage. Clear? Thank you for the answer. No more questions.
Mr. Varyshko, our commissioners have unanimously agreed that with an interview such as this, we will give the candidate the last word. And so I will turn it to you, sir, and if there are any clarifications or there are any statements that you've not had the opportunity to make that you think we need or should hear, now is the time. So if you would, I turn the floor over to you, sir.
Thank you. I think that within our interview, I have expressed all my major ideas. I can just mention that I'm really convinced for myself that if I am appointed a member of the HQCJ, the judiciary will not be sorry for that choice, because I'm the person who is able to pass decisions, pass responsible and quick decisions, and I'm able to bear responsibility for my decisions, be accountable for them. The only thing I would like to add is that, well, I'm sorry for my intonation and for some problems with my attention, because, you know, I've been even given a call. It was before the interview, and I was told that 8 of my comrades perished. And, you know, my mind is there with my comrades there. So the only thing we can do to help them is just to pray for the people who have perished for our independence and for our opportunity to keep working. And I would like to thank you.
Mr. Varyshko, I think I would be remiss if I did not, on behalf of the Commission, express our thanks to you for making the time in your circumstances to participate in and to arrange for this interview. I thank you for your participation, and I also thank your commanders for allowing you this opportunity. With that, I will turn matters over to our chairman, Judge Mischenko.
Thank you, Petro, for the interview. We will conclude our interview now. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you. Goodbye.